I'm Sanook, and I've been making an MMO for the past couple of months, and as ambitious as that was, it was also my first 3D game. This inexperience has really caught up to me, so I'm going back to 2D. I'm going to leave the details for the MMO devlogs, which are still going to continue, but that brings us to this mini-series. I really just want to start creating again, so we'll be making a single player demo with all the core mechanics of our future MMO. I wanted to record everything from starting a blank project to polishing the finished product. I had already started with 3 videos, but I wasn't happy with the format, which was me live coding and commentating. So for this first video, I'm going to do more of a showcase and voiceover, just going over the progress that we've made so far. If you want to see how I actually code and think, I put a playlist of the old videos in the description. One last thing, I've made a Discord that you can join. I want to hear about your games and ideas, so feel free to share. As I said before, we're starting with a blank project, and our first goal is to create our player. I made these player animations while I watch stuff in my downtime, so in this series I'll just be showing up with sprites that are already done. The first bit of coding that we're doing is making a player state machine. This is really important for organizing what the player can and can't do at one time. We're only worried about 2 states for now, so idle and moving, but as the project grows, there will be a lot more states and this system will keep everything in check. Now, before we test our game, I want the resolution to be a lot smaller since we're using pixel art. I settled on 256 by 144, and we're scaling up the window by 4. Now with our square player, we can idle and move. Our next objective is to hook up our player animations. For moving, this will be direction based, and as a help for me, visually, I'm going to be using my iPad to draw and screen sharing so that you can see too. In this case, we're making sure that we have the right direction based on our degrees. On our first test, the player was way too fast, so we slowed that down and tried again. Now the up and down animations were faster than the side ones. I think this issue happened when I imported it, but all I had to do was change the animation speed inside of the sprite, and it worked. Now, I showed these rough backgrounds that I made previously, so we have an overlook and a waterfall, because I'm moving away from an open world to more of these set pieces. I have some creative ideas that I'm not going to spoil just yet, but what we're doing now is creating a way to get from room to room. So I'll let the live version of me explain this. So we got each room. To access them, you need to go to a specific area, and then there'll be kind of a arrow that you can click on once you're in that area, and that will take you to the next room. So first, we just made a button with a visible radius, and we only want the button to be active when the player is in the area. So that works. Now we need to click on the button to go to the next room. Therefore, we made another room and tested it. Next, we duplicated the room arrow so that we can go back and forth. And now we have a way to travel between rooms. Next, we added those backgrounds from before, and we needed a camera to follow the player. So I made a new camera object, and it follows the player smoothly. But in our first test, we let the camera go outside the limits of the room. So we had to clamp where the camera can go, and it worked. Our next feature is sitting. This will be another state for our player, so we're just adding to the state machine. I imported the sitting sprites and started coding. For testing, the button for sitting is spacebar. We will be changing everything so that we only use the left mouse button, so it'll be better for web and mobile. Adding sitting was quite easy. We just needed to copy paste the direction code and make the player stand still. And there we have it. We can sit on the edge of the outlook. That was the first hour of development, and the next day I came back with a list of fixes. The first was adding a shadow to help ground the player. Next was to fix a bug where the player was moving after getting up. And lastly, we renamed room arrows to connectors. Now the objective of this day was to sort out our inputs. As I said, I only want to use one button, so we're going to have to get creative to get the most out of it. I'm going to let the live me explain what I mean. So let's just think about how many different ways we can input something with our left click. So the first one could be a quick tap, and that is what we're currently doing now. So that's for moving around and interacting with objects. The next one I want to add is a tap and then drag. This will be for moving around in a smoother way. And then a last one will be a tapping and holding in the same spot. And then I want this to open up kind of an input wheel. So if you've ever played League and you've seen their ping system, they kind of open up this ping wheel that has a different function for every direction that you move the mouse. So how we tackled this problem was first detecting whether a press was a quick tap or a long press. To test this, I made our movement a tap and sitting a long press. After a couple tweaks, I got that working. Now we need to detect whether the long press was a hold or a drag. We did this by tracking the starting coordinates of the click, and if the player moves their mouse, it will be a drag. We used our console in the bottom left to check if the detection was correct. The first test didn't work because I hadn't reset the checker every click. After I added a line, it properly detected it. Now I wanted an indicator of how long you needed to press to open that input wheel. So I made this animation and drew it on the mouse when we held it. That worked, so we could start on the actual menu. I made a mock-up in Sprite and imported them as parts. So for our logic, we need to check the direction of the mouse to the center of the input wheel for the correct selection. We also need to check the distance because if the mouse is in the center still, it will cancel. We coded that logic and it worked, but we still needed the interface. So I drew all the components and rotated them in the right spot. To add a little polish, we added a hover animation and an icon for sitting. And that was the end of day 2. Before we end this video, I had a couple bug fixes from day 3 that are still relevant. So this is the first one. Let me demonstrate that quickly. So if I hold down and I tab out, I end up not being able to use the input wheel at all. To fix that, I just needed to reset the input wheel after every click. Here's the next one. Oh, so while moving, we actually can't use the input wheel. So if I click down here and I start to hold, because our character is moving, it thinks that our mouse has moved as well. To fix this, I needed to track the mouse position relative to the camera. After a couple tweaks and tests, it was all fixed. Lastly, I wanted to move the sitting sprite down a pixel so that the shadow looked a bit nicer. I think that's a good place to finish our recap. I'm still going to experiment with the format, so any feedback would be nice, and thanks for watching.